one of the reasons why Bears fans are having a hard time is because literally the worst game of his career was the game against Notre Dame this year. And maybe that's the one that's fresh in their heads. I would ask him to do something very drastic and way out of the box. Watch him play the same team the year before.
Did that surprise you? That the Bears had no interest. They rather switch out their entire offensive staff, hire a new DC, and keep Eberflus than reaching out to Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, that would definitely surprise me, especially because he's got connections there in the city. Usually, what happens is you kind of usher in a new era at the quarterback position. It's usually followed by some other changes in the organization. Normally, it's either a general manager or a head coach. But the Bears they've got this interesting cycle going now where they've kind of held on to a coach and then brought in a quarterback. This would be assuming, and we'll get to that part of the conversation, assuming they do it. That's the third time that they would have potentially done that, of bringing in a new quarterback after swapping out some of the staff.
You know what they say about doing the same thing over and over again, Daniel, like expecting it to be a different outcome. And I think there's some skepticism here. Well, before we get to the quarterback conversation, what do you make of the Bears hiring Shane Waldren as their offensive coordinator?
I don't know him, but I think, he's been around a lot of smart people. I thought he did a pretty good job last year in Seattle. So on the outside, without a ton of knowledge of him as a person, I think the results are pretty solid, and I'd be excited about that if I were a Bears fan.
How much, I guess a better question is how would you believe, would it be Fields or Williams that you think would fit his style better, I guess?
Well, I think a lot of times it's, the good play callers at Tom, that, man. Like, they're going to work around who they have. I just want the best player.
Right.
And I think that's Caleb, and I would imagine he could fit into any system with what he's capable of. So that would be my answer to that. I think Caleb would be the answer, and but you'd be smart, whoever the coordinator is, whoever they would have hired, would be smart to kind of survey the landscape of who the quarterback is and kind of morph and build around him instead of forcing him to fit into what he does.
You're on the outside looking in on this in regards to Justin Fields. Would it surprise you, or maybe you do know this, that this is as polarizing of a decision with the fan base as any that we could remember?
Yeah, I talked to somebody about this. It was actually not even someone in the league, because everybody I talked to in the league kind of shares the same opinion, which is this shouldn't be very complicated. You go get Caleb Williams, obviously the financial side of it, and jump into all that as well. But you chase greatness. It's a no-brainer. That's from people in the league. But then I hear the feedback, obviously, on social media, and you guys see it and hear it all the time. There is a affinity for Fields there in Chicago, and I love his toughness. I think it's easy to see he's got better and better, and he's going to be a starting quarterback somewhere in the league next year. But I didn't fully understand it. And then somebody I talked to who's literally just a lifelong Bears fan, and he was like, do you realize how low the bar is at quarterback here? Like, what we've watched over the last 30 years, we've seen competence, and some of us have confused competence for greatness. And that's why the love affair is there. And I get that. I didn't think of it from that standpoint.
Daniel, we advise people that come on and we have these conversations who suggest that going to Williams is a better option than Fields is to take your phone, put it in a shoebox for 2 days, because you're not going to believe some of the stuff that people are going to send your way. With regard to Caleb, last year won the Heisman, was a can't-miss generational guy, and then after this year, there were some people suggesting that, hey, he didn't play that well. What do you make of the narrative changing? How do you feel about him now?
Yeah, I feel the same as I did last year. Obviously, it's a little more. It's not as easy to profess it because the results, were different this year than the results last year. But when you go back in and watch the tape, and you see the schedule was tougher. They played a better schedule. But B, the interior of their offensive line was not good at all, and he was under constant duress. The defense was worse, one of the worst defenses in college football. So you are constantly feeling the pressure of needing to score 50 points. I think they scored 42 points against Washington and lost.
Yeah.
A bunch of the losses he had, you can look at it where he had big days. But to me, he was under a lot of pressure. I thought he tried to do too much. There were times where I'm just watching tape going, just take the check down, take the check down. He wouldn't. He got a little big play hungry there. But everything that I saw with him that was in the negative column is 100% correctable. And I've seen him do all the things that you need to do to play that position at an extremely high level. I think he's a rare talent in terms of just the throwing ability. Like if you guys were to, play a game of horse with quarterbacks and say, okay, over this, under that, drive the ball where it doesn't get, but only so high off the ground from this arm angle, that arm angle. Like he's just a gifted thrower of the football. So he's not perfect. There's no perfect prospects. But I know somebody told me the other day, brought up the good point that, one of the reasons why Bears fans are having a hard time is because literally the worst game of his career was the game against Notre Dame this year. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's the one that's fresh in their heads. I would ask him to do something very drastic and way out of the box. Watch him play the same team the year before and see what you think.
Yeah, interesting. Daniel Jeremiah joining us. It's Waddle and Sylvie on ESPN 1000. What about the personality of what you know right now, Daniel? What about him as a teammate? What about an overbearing father that some people may bring up? About wanting him to change the landscape of how rookies are paid or what he wants from a team? What do you know about all that stuff off the field or in the locker room?
Well, I'm still a lot to learn there. And so, I don't have a ton of concrete information there other than just talking to buddies and scouts that have gone through there. I haven't had a chance to talk to the USC folks myself. But everything that I've got is like, look, he loves football. He's a hard worker. He watches a ton of tape. He puts in time. So that is all great. Now, from people in his, if you want to call it his camp, I don't know if that's his family, if that's people that are around him that maybe were a little naive in terms of the power that you might possess coming into this process. I think that's fair to say that maybe that's the case, but it doesn't sound like that's specifically him. So when you have, to me, everything I've heard is a good teammate. Guys in the team seem to really like him, and he works really hard. Some of the naive stuff in the camp and off the field, that stuff, I mean, look, you do your homework on it, but I haven't heard anything that's a major red flag in that regard.
Is there any sort of big offer that you could get that you would be able to move off of him where you would say, hey, the Bears could go and get Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3. He's can't miss. He's super good. And then the Bears could collect a couple of first-round picks in the process while still using Justin Fields to find out with a different coach and more around him if he could be the solution in the process?
I wouldn't go in that direction. I can't imagine what the offer would be. I would just say, I would turn around and ask people this. Do you think that you have the 4th best quarterback in your division? And do you want to go into next year potentially still having the 4th best quarterback in your division? Or do you want to take, and there is a chance, there's obviously a risk involved in anybody you take, but you want to take somebody who, I don't know if he'll be the best quarterback in the division, but if they drafted Caleb Williams, they would have the most talented quarterback in that division.
Interesting. Are you concerned at all with his size?
No, he's thick. I mean, he's going to be 6'1", maybe a little bit over, but I think he's got huge hands, and he's, 220 pounds. I mean, he is put together. He's just not tall. But he's one of those guys when you have the type of arm that he has, Tom, where you can go under center and you can go play action. Think about what Seattle did with Russell, and you can create so much distance between him and the line of scrimmage. Mahomes does the same thing. Mahomes isn't a huge guy. But when you have arms like that, you can, if you have issues seeing, fine, just set him up deeper because he's got an absolute hose to be able to make any throw you want from depth.
Daniel, I heard, like you mentioned a little bit earlier, that a lot of people felt he was trying to do too much at times. But then when you watch him, ball also comes out about as quick as I've seen a quarterback let the ball go when he's playing in structure. What type of offense do you think he'll thrive in going forward?
I think if you watched, and I know people complained about the Bills the other night, right? But if you watch that game, Josh Allen is, he threw probably, 12 or had maybe 12 completions kind of along the line of scrimmage because, and this, I think Caleb's got quicker hands than Josh does, just to be able to catch, rock, throw. You can bake in some of those easy ones. He can throw it around defenders. You want to unblock the end, he can drop it down and get it around them. But, like, to me, early on, I'm going to give him some of those baked in, and we're going to run the ball, and then we're going to take vertical shots, whether that's, over the top, that's deep overs, things like that, with the run game being involved in that, using that play action to be able to get depth from the center. And on top of that, I think early on in his career, you can sprinkle in some of the design quarterback runs because, look, he's a sturdy dude. So I think that's kind of a good way to ease him in. But I think once you get him comfortable, I think it's kind of limitless of the things you can do with him.
I was just going to ask, outside of him trying to do too much, in your opinion, this year, what would be, if you had to write down some negatives, what would those be?
Yeah, I think just not taking layups when they're there. I think holding the ball, which led to some sacks. One of the biggest things, which again, all these things are correctable. He splits his hands when he takes off, so that's led to some fumbles. So just keeping two hands on the ball when you're moving around in the pocket. I think those are kind of the main things. But I've seen him play in structure. I've seen him get to number 3 in the progression from the pocket. It's just, when you're getting hit a ton and you're getting a ton of interior pressure, he started, realizing I'm not going to settle in here and make a home in this pocket. I'm going to try and move around. So you look at the teams that are still playing, the 4 that are left. It's not a secret. You're talking about a ton of high draft capital invested in the offensive lines, especially for 3 of the 4 teams. The Niners are a little different, but could keep investing in that offensive line, whoever the heck the quarterback's going to be.
Talking to Daniel Jeremiah from the NFL Network. Also check out his podcast, Move the Sticks. Wherever you listen to your podcast, it's Waddle and Sylvie. I know that one of your favorite prospects in the draft is Odunze. Do you believe that the Bears have a chance to get him at 9?
Yeah, I wouldn't even say one of. He's my favorite player in the whole draft. I love watching that guy play. He is a stud. And I think, look, I've talked to teams all the time, and right now you're getting more individual evaluations from GMs or, personnel guys. It's not how their board is, going to be set. But a lot of them have, Marvin and then Neighbors and then Odunze. My personal preference, I have Marvin, obviously, will be my top guy, but I gave Odunze the same grade. He's my number 2 guy, and it's 1A and 1B. And I think it's a home run. I think he's so easy to watch what he does translate as someone who's a craftsman, who's like a real route runner, can run every route on the tree, and is got a big catch radius. Contact catches, he's better than Marvin in that department, and there's stats that'll bear that out. But if he's there at 9, and you've got your quarterback with the first pick, and you've got a chance to get him at 9, oh man, I would not use the 15 minutes to let us blabber on the network about it. I would just run that thing up as fast as possible.
Well, I'm actually looking at your mock draft here, and I got to ask you, you have him going to the Chargers at 5.
Oh,
is there a reason?
Hometown of favoritism right there, Daniel.
You know why? Because in that mock draft, they wouldn't let me give an outfielder to the Padres. So that was the next best thing that I could do.
I like that. I like that.
Listen, I can't imagine if the Chargers hire Harbaugh with Justin Herbert and you find Odunze on that roster next year, along with some of the other talent inside that huddle, they're going to be an exciting football team. There's no question.
You know what that means, right? If that happens, I'll get fired, and then I won't even get to see it. It's like I'll be like Moses. I wouldn't even get to go into the promised land. I just get to see it from a distance.
Who do you have the Bears getting at number 9?
You got a pass rusher, Jared Verse. Yeah.
Which, by the way, one of the things I actually kind of like about the mock drafts, which they can be a little bit futile in its exercise, but I do sometimes, people won't believe this, but some of the feedback you get from fans, sometimes it'll make me rethink some things. I haven't thought of it from that perspective, and one of which was, if we're going to take the quarterback, then, wouldn't you want to go all in on making sure that decision is made right by just doubling down on offense? And I'm like, you know what? That's actually a pretty good point. If I was the one making the pick at 1, and I had to choose, I choose a quarterback, and I've decided to, move on from Justin Fields, man, I might want to help myself out a little bit with that decision and go offense again with the second pick.
Hey, we'd be remiss if we didn't get your thoughts on what will transpire Sunday in the title game. So what do you expect in the AFC and NFC title games?
I think everybody plays their best game. It's the two home teams. Kansas City, it sounds crazy. I see them twice a year, and I know how great I work with Andy Reid. I know how great Mahomes is. I just think Baltimore's a better team, and I think their defense can suffocate you, and I don't think Kansas City has a way to expand that defense. So I like Baltimore there. And then, look, I feel like San Francisco kind of had their clunker last week and still found a way to win. I anticipate they'll play a heck of a lot better this week.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube, and make sure to download the ESPN Chicago app. You can listen to our live shows and podcasts wherever you go.